Morning with some of the finest names in voiceover. And now, here's your host, voice actor Andrew Morrison.
Hi there, my name is Andrew Morrison, and welcome to the VoiceOver Coffee Shop, where we start our day with some of the finest names in voiceover. If you'd like to know more about me, feel free to visit my personal website at www.voicebard.com. In today's episode, we have my dear friend Dan Lenard. Dan has become a recognized industry expert in home studio setup and problem solving, specifically for voiceover artists new to the industry. He is also co-host of the popular VoiceOver Body Shop, which talks about home voiceover studios and other news within the industry. In addition, he is also a founding board member of the World Voices Organization, an industry association set to represent voiceover artists around the world. Dan not only tells us the biggest myths in building a voiceover home studio, but also how he built 100 clients in 3 years, and about Wovo's mission in the world of voiceover. Please give a warm welcome to Dan Lenard. Hey Dan,
Hey.
how are you?
Fine. How you doing?
Doing fantastic today. So, how do you take your coffee?
Oh, I take it. Well, depends on where I am.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm, if you're familiar with Tim Hortons, it was always double. But we don't have Tim Hortons out here in California, so it's
Right.
Starbucks or Dunkin' or one of those places, and there it's double. But right now it's vanilla flavored almond milk.
Fantastic. So you do voiceover work and you have a business where you help in-home people get their studios set up. Did you start on the studio side and the technical side of voiceover, or did you start on the voice side of it?
Well, I like to say I've been doing voice work since the Ford administration. I started doing it right out of college. Actually, when I was in college, I was always interested in recording, and was on the school announcing staff in high school. Did theater, and then when I went to college, I went to college to study broadcasting, and I went to college in 1975. Went to Bowling Green State University my freshman year, and learned an awful lot about audio production in a very short period of time.
Yeah.
With reel-to-reel tape, a razor blade, and a grease pencil. And this is well before the age of digital recording, and on reel-to-reel machines that were probably from the 40s, but still worked and were well maintained. Which you'll find at a university. Anyway, but I learned how to edit sound and do production work there. And when I graduated from college, I went back to Buffalo and finished my school at Buffalo State College, which also had a great broadcasting program. And went into radio and was a radio announcer, and eventually a production director, where I produced commercials. So my job was, work with the copywriter, get the secretary in here. I need the station manager. He's got a great voice. Bring him in here, that sort of thing. And I had a great time doing that, and producing stuff for some of the on-air guys. And then I went into easy listening music for, which is not something you're an expert in. It's just saying stuff like Joy FM 96, all music, all the time. And, we did production work there, and I stayed in radio probably for about 15 years, and, had a talk show, did all those sorts of things. So I learned audio production in the analog fashion. So I went back to school, got a teaching degree. Well, I sold insurance for a while. I like to ignore those years. And then got my teaching degree, taught social studies, American history, and the Constitution. Imagine what my brain's going through right now. And, but taught, and I taught television studio production and built our own studio and all those sorts of things. And then And then I left education in 2001 and came home and was producing my master's degree project, which was it turned into a radio program, an hour-long radio documentary on this legendary jazz musician who was from New York, but he lived most of his life in Buffalo, by the name of Alan Tinney. And he supposedly is the father of bebop, and he was a great guy. I got to meet him, and then he died in the middle of the thing. But and that taught me that, well, look, if I can record digitally and do all this stuff here in my basement, I should be able to do this anywhere. And I typed in voiceover on my computer. They did have search engines back then. and I type in voiceover, and it was like, as I like to say, it was like when Dorothy opens the door from black and white in their house into Munchkinland, and it's in Technicolor. And there was this new industry of online voiceover just happening. And so I started getting very involved in doing voice work, e-learning, audiobooks, commercials when they would come along, those sorts of things. And at the early times of social media, where you would get on stuff like Facebook and LinkedIn, and some of the pay-to-play sites would like to help their people, and they would like ask me, well, you want to answer questions? Because people would find me online and say, how do you do this? How do you do that? And finally, my wife was like, you're not going to give away 25 years of knowledge of production and proper audio production. Why don't you hang out a shingle? And so I started doing, the home studio master, and and then people found me, and I found a way to do business with that. So it was voice work, and when people asked, I would do a consultation with them and teach them how to do it, or see how they're doing and make sure that their sound is proper. Which is something that apparently nobody knows how to do, because nobody understands what it is you're supposed to be doing.
Everybody's got a different answer for what you're supposed to be doing. So you said that was in Buffalo, New York. How did that translate to you being in California?
Oh, it's a long period of time. I mean, I spent 58 years in Buffalo. We came out to California in 2015 because my youngest son, who has very high functioning Asperger's, is also an incredibly talented animator. And at the time, if he wanted to have a career, we needed to be in LA. Of course, I wanted to be in LA because a lot of my friends were here, and everybody wanted me to move out and move next door to them so I could take care of their production studio and their home voiceover studio. And so we came out here in 2015, and he got into a program at a school called Exceptional Minds, which is a model program here in Sherman Oaks, set up by industry people like, Jamie Lee Curtis and Ed Asner. What's her name? And I met her. She's gorgeous. What's her name? She played Medicine Woman. And she's got the thing on. You know who I'm talking about. Anyway, those were some of the people who were starting this place, and he got in the third year. And it's not just like for people, because it was specifically for people with autistic spectrum disorders. They found that they're very, very good at animation, digital special effects, that sort of thing. And and he was creating his own series already. So like, yeah, well, we want him. They were only taking 10 people a year. And we came out here on the idea that he was probably going to get in there, and he did. So he was able to bike to school every day.
Oh, fantastic.
He was in the program. And then they actually have a studio that's a working Hollywood studio, and they actually do work for the major studios. Sometimes you'll see, if you're watching the credits of some big Marvel blockbuster, it'll say credits by Exceptional Minds. And they produce stuff for Sesame Street and a couple of big corporations. And it's a really interesting program where they're really trying to take people who are incredibly talented but have autistic spectrum disorders, very hard to employ. So they're training them how to work in the industry while teaching the industry how to work with them.
Right.
So that's essentially what brought us out here. I mean, that
Okay.
in January and February. Yeah. And my mother lives out here, so it made it
Gotcha. So, did he animate Mugman? Out of
he did.
curiosity, he did.
No, that was all him. That was like an accident. He was taking art lessons from a friend of ours who's a very prominent artist in Western New York.
Hmm.
And he goes, do me a storyboard. And he's like, oh, okay. And he wrote this little storyboard using this character that he and his friends were using in something in Big Little Planet or something. I don't know what it was.
Right.
And she's like, do you think you can animate that? And he's like, oh, okay. Because he knew how to animate. And he did that. And we wrote a little script for it. And I'm like, nah, it's got to be longer. It can't be 30 seconds long. Let's try and drag this out for 2 minutes. Let's make it a bigger joke.
Right.
And so, we both did the voices for it, and he threw it on his YouTube channel, and suddenly it was like, hey, this is really good. And it was how he expressed his worldview of things.
Right.
So it was an opportunity for him to really become somebody. And, and I got to take part and help him write some of the stuff. And, when it's like, what do I do with this? How would this work? And I would come up with the most obscure thing. And it was great stuff. So that's what happened with Mugman. He's got a new series that we're trying to get out right now called Loose Ends, which is actually even better and even funnier. And he did another one called Plancy, where it's supposed to be.
I've seen. Yeah. You helped write and direct Plancy, didn't you?
I wrote a lot of that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But I got to play this flower that lived in her head, and he's like this nasty, obscene flower. It's like, who the hell are you talking to? That sort of.
Yeah. Fantastic. Yeah. So, what influenced you to want to even go to college for broadcast in the first place?
Just what I wanted to do.
Did you just listen to the radio and you were like, "Oh, that's cool. Right. I want to do that. That sounds like fun."
I grew up in the 60s, and it was AM radio. And if you're familiar with WKBW radio in Buffalo, and some of the other 50,000 watt clear channel stations, I was always into that, mostly trying to listen to hockey games from all over the place. WOWO in Fort Wayne, Indiana, home of the Fort Wayne Comets, that sort of thing. So I was always interested in broadcasting. And that's, and I was in theater, and that's how I got into it.
So what were some of the biggest resources that helped you along the way with that?
As far as
going from making that leap from I'm going to do broadcast to I'm going to go help people build their home studios. And
it was this was a 30-year evolution, sort of thing. I mean, I was strictly broadcasting. And then, when I started, because I had a teaching degree and a master's degree in education, everybody should go back to school and really learn how to be culturally literate and how to do something really important. And teaching is a great thing. But, because I was able to teach, I started doing webinars on it, and, in the early days of webinars, and really sitting down with people and teaching them how to physically do it. So after thousands and thousands of, talking to different people and, conferences and all these other things, you get quite a pretty deep knowledge of exactly what it is you're supposed to do in a home studio. And we've got so many people trying to get into the business right now who are utterly clueless. It's, they're like, oh, it's just reading for a living.
Right.
Not quite that. So the resources I had were, a master's degree in education and a very deep knowledge of how to record properly.
Tell you what, I could have definitely used you when I first started out, because I did not know what I was doing. I was like, oh, I can go into a closet and I can just put clothes up, which, I mean, it worked, but I still kept getting a good bit of reverb. And a lot of people told me I had a reverb, and I didn't know what reverb was. And Like I didn't know the terminology because I wanted to get into voiceover. I didn't know the audio engineering side of it. So when somebody comes to you to build a home studio, what do you think the biggest myth about building a home studio is? The biggest misconception?
Oh, that you've got to have the best and most expensive equipment, because it's clearly the equipment that gets you all this work, which is utter nonsense. The problem is that people keep reading all of these, blog posts and, in social media and in Facebook groups and LinkedIn groups and all these other
Mhm.
places. And people say, what's the best microphone for voiceover? Oh, you have to have a Neumann TLM 103 or a U87. You got to have this because that makes me sound great. To which I
Right.
usually respond, who cares? Because it's not the microphone that makes somebody sound great. It's what goes on between your ears and goes into your lungs and comes out in the
Right.
sound that you exist in and have. And one microphone is not going to capture you better than another. And the more a microphone captures something, the more it hears everything else within a 10-mile radius. So
Right.
you don't want that. You don't want a big, expensive microphone. It's all about technique, and all of it is physical. And that's the biggest mistake that most people make, is they don't understand what the physical things are that have to go into your home voiceover studio, because it's not your job to be an engineer. Your job is to hit record and be a voice actor.
And that's crazy that you mentioned the Neumann TLM 103 because Neumann owns Sennheiser. So
Yes,
the
well,
reason that they price things so differently is so they can keep Neumann as those luxury microphones.
right.
But I have the Sennheiser MK4
Mm-hmm.
and what, $700 worth of difference between the two microphones, and I can't hear 5 cents worth of difference.
And that's the
Like,
thing.
that's
Yeah.
exactly it. Right.
Yeah. There isn't an engineer out there that's going to say, oh, you're using a TLM 103 or you're using a
Right.
U80. They can't tell. So what is this big argument? Oh, what's going to make me sound best? Who cares what you sound like? You don't hire
Right.
you.
Right.
If they can hear you and it sounds good, it is good.
Noise floor, bit, sample rate. That's it.
Well, it's the acoustics of the room, how much noise is coming from the outside, what is the
Right.
reverberation inside the room, proper microphone technique so you're not getting plosives. I mean, if you're watching me here on Zoom, but they can't see, but do I have a pop screen on my microphone? And I can go Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers all day long, and I'm not getting any plosives
Right.
because it's all proper microphone technique. And then setting proper input levels, which nobody understands.
Right. So, what's one thing that you wish that you knew when you started?
Something I wish I knew.
Something, if you were to go write a letter to about to jump into college, about to jump into about to start in radio, about to
Right.
start on your audio degree, on your broadcast degree.
Well, the first lesson I learned once I got out of college is that it's not art, it's business. A job is a job. The bottom line is $1. I mean, you can be creative and all those sorts of things, but it really comes down to being able to be good enough to keep the job you have. Or in voiceover today, understanding that it is a completely entrepreneurial business and you can't depend on anybody else to get you work. It's your responsibility. And I think that's something that a lot of people make a mistake at. And it's something that I had to learn very quickly once I started professionally, in radio. I'm like, oh, okay, I'm a creative person, but who cares? Do I show up every day? Do I get my job done? Yeah, I can be creative in there, but it's not my creativity that's going to, make sure that I'm employed all the time.
Right. So, what has kept you going through all of these changes?
Well, in the voiceover industry, in the last 15 years since I started doing this, knowing what I know, knowing that there's people that need to be helped, there's always the next job, and trying to make sure that doing what it takes to make sure the business is always coming in, and of course teaching other people how to do it, but
Right.
not a public service agency. I mean, there's there's certain things I need to do to make a living, and this is one of the things that I do. And so it keeps me making a living, and it's fun. But I think the thing that really keeps me going, now that I think about it, is all the other great people in the business.
Right.
I have so many friends and so many acquaintances just from doing what I do. Someone like you,
Right.
I just voiceover people just have a whole lot in common, and I love it, which is one of the reasons that we started the industry association for freelance voice talent, World Voices, and of which I was one of the 4 founding members, and we're very proud of it. We've been up for 9 years now, and we have over 800 members, and worldwide, and we're really trying to be a worldwide international organization, and and right now we're starting to really gain momentum again.
Tell me more about the World Voices organization.
We are, unlike a Facebook group or some anomalous sort of entity, we are an industry association. The purpose of an industry association is to work collectively to help everybody in a specific industry.
Right.
And our mission, at least the way I envision it, is that it's our mission really to raise the perception in the community, in the business community, that voiceover is a profession, that we are supposed to be well compensated for what we do. We are not paving contractors. If there's any
Right.
paving contractors out there, I'm very sorry, but we've invested in our equipment, we've invested in training, we've invested in time and those sorts of things, and we're not doing it as a hobby, although I'd say
Right.
90% of the people are probably doing it as a hobby and not as a full-time gig trying to make a living.
Right.
Sure, if there's any full-timers out there listening, they'll probably go, yeah, probably. It's not an easy job. I mean, there's a lot to it. Yeah, 90% of the people are hobbyists, and they don't understand that there is a way to make a living doing this, but you've got to be really good.
Right.
And it's not something that's going to happen overnight. When I really started doing voiceover, I sat down and made a plan. Got to do a business plan. It's like, I want to have 100 repeat paying clients in 5 years. I did it in 3 years, and built a business, along the way, using pay to plays, making cold calls, talking to, producers and things like that. Really never really had an agent. I mean, I have agents, but do they ever find me work? No. They're fun to talk to, but of course now I'll never get an agent. But I'm with a couple of agencies, and they call on me. But not being a young person anymore, most people who are doing the hiring today thought I was dead 15 years ago. So they're not hiring us old guys unless they want an old guy. And I don't sound like an old guy. I sound like I'm in my 40s, at least to my own ears. I don't know. Depends on the time of day too. But yeah, it's a profession, and you have to be good. What we offer at Wovo is, mentoring for people who are not really full-time professionals, who are trying to build up to be full-time professionals.
Mhm.
We look at industry issues, and it's an open discussion. We present webinars, and we have an annual conference. At least we did till all this nonsense hit. And then we've been doing regional conferences, and it's great because it's a core group of people that I've known for years. And we've been bringing new people in, and the enthusiasm is really there, and it's important. Oh, and the other thing we're doing is we also have a website called voiceover.biz that Joe Davis and I built, called voiceover.biz, which is it's a member benefit for our professional members. who it's a searchable directory of them and their demos. So if someone can
Okay.
looking for someone who does this, and according to all the demos they have, it will, spit out the people who do that. And these are vetted professionals. These are people who we consider, professional voice people. And, we're trying to let the producers and, the people who produce e-learning and audiobooks and all these other things, look, you can, go out one of these pay to plays. We don't charge you to be on voiceover.biz, but all you're going to get is our professional members who are all good at this. And it will save you a lot of time. And, we're hoping that, some agents will just use us as their roster. So it's, check it out, voiceover.biz and world-voices.org, or WOVO as we like to call it.
I hope you enjoyed learning about how Dan paved his path into the industry and spent the last 30 years giving back to the community through his desire to educate those in need of how to properly build a home studio. In our next episode,